and welcome back to another episode of the Daft on Draft podcast. And we are coming to you to talk about Ohio State's 34-21 win, or 23 win against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in the College Football National Championship. I won't be doing that alone. I have my co-host here, Cory Kinnan, with me. Cory, just if you had one word to describe that football game, what would it be? Or one phrase?
One phrase. I mean, trench dominance, I think is what I would say. Yeah, it looked a little bit tighter on paper, and like Notre Dame kept it close. And I'll give Riley Leonard some credit for some of he was making some throws in that second half as well, which is weird because he hasn't made a throw all season. But I mean, Ohio State just beat them up. Like Notre Dame, Riley Leonard had 17 carries for 40 yards. Jeremiah Love, 4 carries for 3 yards. Price, 3 carries for 13 yards. And of course, being down 2-3 scores by halftime, like 2 scores by halftime, 3 scores first drive out the second half, like you're not going to be able to run the ball as much as you want. You're not going to be able to ride Jeremiah Love as much as you want. But I mean, you get in that position because outside of that first 10-minute drive to start the game, you can't run the ball. And you have to trust Riley Leonard to throw, and then you fall behind fast. And so Tyler Williams, again, dominant up front as a run defender. And then Ohio State offensive line, they turned it on in the playoffs, and it didn't stop, even against that Notre Dame front. So I would say trench dominance is how I would classify it.
I like it. Mine was going to be Riley Leonard. Even in a loss, the best performance I've ever seen from him.
Oh my gosh.
Quite easily. And it started off, obviously, with CTE speed run. That's the only way to describe what was happening there on that first drive, was just him putting his head down and getting as many yards as his body would allow him to get. But when they got down, and listen, their offense just isn't built to sustain 2nd and 20. So that second drive killed them. They were done. At that point, the game was pretty much over. Once it got to 21-7, it was effectively done. Mm-hmm. But I do think that when they finally just let him, because they were trying to do a bunch of screen stuff, and that wasn't working, and they were trying to run the same offense of get the ball out fast, let playmakers kind of make plays. And when they actually let Riley Leonard drop back and kind of operate within the pocket and kind of create a little bit from within the pocket and stand in there and take shots and deliver passes, and man, he was really good. And there are times where he will, in a clean pocket, inexplicitly miss a throw by 6 yards. It's kind of hilarious to watch. But this is a dude with that toughness. And then the flashes, the touchdown pass was gorgeous. The late one.
Yeah.
And he had a couple of throws in the face of pressure to the intermediate
on third
levels
longs,
of the field.
yeah.
On 3rd and longs, where they needed to have it, where you just haven't seen that from him and that offense. And that's why I've kind of been a fan of his, as like, I think that this dude is going to be one of those guys who plays for 10 plus years as a backup and a spot starter in the NFL.
Who would you say is like a quarterback you'd compare him to, like historically, who like can run like that and can do some things with his legs, and he can get you some, he might be able to win you a handful of games.
Heineke.
Okay.
I
feel like that's a fallback for every gritty white quarterback, right?
He's way more physical than Heineke, and that's why, like, Josh McCown.
Oh, Josh McCown's a good one. Elite basketball players.
Players.
Have you seen Josh McCown's basketball mixtape, dude?
No, I don't think I have.
Oh, dude.
I knew that he played because he's a freaky athlete, but
he's got like some highlights from charity games in his 30s where he's just like dunking on dudes. It's amazing.
But yeah, man, Riley Leonard is the 2 words of the phrase for me for that game. What else stood out to you? Because this game was really a first half game.
Yeah.
What really stood out to you in that first half, other than, because I think that second drive getting to 2nd and 25.
Mhm.
It was over. The penalties killed Notre Dame. Do you think that offense could have continued to move the ball if they would have stayed on schedule against Ohio State?
No, I don't think so.
See, because
so that's what Notre Dame did the first time, or like when they played last year too. They had a CT speed run drive, and then it just kind of fell off from there. And and last year they had Joel and Blake Fisher.
I think they could have thrown the ball in this game as long as they could have protected. Every single drop back in the second half was Iggy or Hancock grabbing the shit out of a wide receiver.
It was, yeah.
It looked pretty ugly at times for that Ohio State secondary. And that's what they do. They're physical. They're going to grab. They're going to try to get away with everything that they can get away from. And the biggest thing with that, and I think that the part of the conversation that we have to have about their secondary and the way that they play, is they put a lot of pressure on their corners to sit and be flat-footed at 7-8 yards and then still be able to turn and burn with guys. They want them to be able to catch and carry, and that's really freaking hard. And that's not something that is going to happen at the NFL level because you cannot make contact like that. So I actually think that there are times where Hancock and Burke, and especially Iggy, are going to potentially be better pros because they're not being asked to catch and carry at 8 yards against some really good athletes. So that's kind of a thought that I have about their ascension to the NFL level.
I question Burke a little bit. It's so weird because Burke is obviously the guy who's been starting since he's a freshman.
Yeah.
But like, I think I question Burke most out of all of those guys transitioning to the NFL. And it's more some long speed and eyes stuff. That he gets really
the long
stuck.
speed stuff is.
I want to talk about the other quarterback. Let's talk about Will Howard a little bit here.
Perfect in the first half.
13-13. And yes, a lot of it was like really designed. Like, you know that Chip Kelly and Ryan Day were like looking at every tendency of that Notre Dame defense under a microscope. And a buddy of mine and Brown's Twitter pointed it out, but Notre Dame's defense even knows like the foot alignment of Ohio State's wide receivers when they're trying to do a reverse or a jet sweep or something like that. Because that Jeremiah Smith first touchdown, where he looked like he was getting the reverse and he pivoted back out, and Emeka Egbuka pointed to you could watch that touchdown, pointed to Jeremiah Smith's feet and said, "Hey, switch your feet." And when he did that, Cam Hart, the corner, thought he knew or Christian Hart or whatever his name is, Christian Gray, Cam Hart, graduated last year, Christian Gray, like called it out, and he's like jumping up and down on tape, like it's a reverse. I saw that. And so like Ohio State schemed that. They're like, we're going to catch him here and we're going to pivot back. We're going to fake reverse pivot back. And he walked in. Nobody like corner took off the other side of the field trying to take after the reverse. So, a lot of it was very scheme stuff, but like both against Texas and Notre Dame, Will Howard's doing a lot of really good work over the middle of the field. Like he's finding digs and he's throwing digs, and which is rare because I'm charting now. I'm getting through some of these other older guys that weren't like top name prospects, and he's not throwing middle of the field at all. Everything's to the boundary. And I think both Texas and Notre Dame made a concerted effort to funnel everything back inside because they noticed that, but he doesn't care. He's playing confident. He's letting it rip. I don't know, but like, and I also think he's a more creative passer than people give him credit for. Like outside of structure, he can get out there and he can get his shoulder squared back up on the run and make some throws outside of structure. So I thought
we had some early conversations about Will Howard before or after news of the transfer. And we talked about him, you and I, at Kansas State. And we both kind of liked him a little bit and thought that he could be one of those, maybe mid-round guys this year. And
I think he's probably played himself back into that 3 to 5 range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a class where, we've talked about it. There's 2 quarterbacks in this class. And I do think there's no real point in taking a guy in day 2. And that's just like a general thing for me with quarterbacks. Like, unless you want to just spend a pick on, say, Jalen Milroe and just like gamble on the upside, sure. Mm-hmm. But I think you kind of know where the ceiling would potentially be with Will Howard. Yeah. And there's just no point in drafting that before day 3.
No, I agree completely. To me, he's in that like the Jake Hayner-ish kind of tier, where like they're gamers
So
and they can find some throws. And
I think he's a better passer and a worse runner than I thought he was coming.
Yeah,
from
he's not an explosive runner, but he can do a little bit with his legs for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that first half, man, he was on it, and even that mesh rail throw to Travion Henderson, where Xavier Watson and him fought for the football in the air, unbelievable, like football play, by the way.
One of my favorite
both
plays
of those
I think
guys.
I've ever seen.
Yes. I just want to shout out Xavier. Will Howard made the right throw on that throw too. Like he read one-on-one, like no safety over the top. You throw the rail. The mesh was coming open if he would have waited, but like you throw the rail.
Yeah.
Like Jeremiah Smith would have walked in on the mesh rub, but like he made the right decision and he put it right on him. But what a play by Xavier Watts, flat-footed from the second level to turn, rotate out, get in the hips, and then make that play on the football in the air. Just like
there was another play in the first half where Henderson was loose getting outside, and he had the angle, and Watts chased him down.
Do we think Watts is a better athlete than we gave him credit for earlier in the season?
I think he might be. And he's not Starks or even Worry athletic, explosive, but man,
he doesn't have Makuba's trigger either. But
with
like,
with how freaking good he is at everything,
especially at the safety position, I don't care. Like,
I think he has more athleticism than we give him credit for. Like, listen, the 33rd team's Kyle Krabs has him as a top 10 player in this class, and listen, plant your flag because I love the player too. My grading scale, the athleticism part of it came in a little bit lower. That is a good freaking football player.
Yeah. Here's the thing about draft content that like people need to understand. Because scouts are never right. Draft content's not about being right because scouts are really right. Like it's like math. It's about showing your freaking work. And if you can show your work and back it up, then that's what makes you a good analyst. You're not going to hit 30. You're not even going to hit 3. It's like baseball. Yeah. If you get 280, you're going to make a lot of money playing baseball.
Mm-hmm.
You hit 280 as a GM, you're going to be around for a long time. Like it's kind of what it is. It's the game. And so like I think my favorite thing about draft content is there's no pressure to be right. There's all the pressure to show your work and be thorough and like in depth with it. If you think Xavier Watts the 10th best player, Kyle Krabs, I know your work. You show your work. Like,
and I love. I said this earlier in the year, and it just becomes more and more apparent as I see everybody's boards start to come together. This is a separator class for people that I don't want to say no ball, but the people that actually put in the work, because those people have very different boards than everybody else. The people that are putting in the work, there is absolutely no consensus on this class whatsoever. None. You will see Nick Eamon-Worry at 90, and you will see him at 8. And you will see Malachi Stark. Well, Malachi Stark, you'll pretty much see in everybody's top 20.
Shamar Stewart's another one. You'll see
Shamar Stewart's everywhere.
Top 10.
Caleb Johnson is everywhere. The quarterbacks are everywhere. Like, this is a class where you want to see how different people are looking at things. And that's how you know who is actually putting in the work and who is just kind of going off of the consensus of the big names, i.e. Dane in the industry. like there's a lot of people that are just going off Dane or just going off of PFF and you'll be able to know who those guys are.
I've got a pretty big tell, but this isn't, again, draft content's for everybody, so I don't want to be like too harsh, but like Quinshawn Judkins is a top 2 back in this class as a tell for me. Like, this is a consensus summer scouting kind of a shit. But that's enough of that talk.
Even let's talk about this. Let's talk about like guys like JTT. Dane loves him, and Dane has loved him from day one.
Yeah.
And I have just never seen it with him. But then him and Jack Sawyer came out, and just like Will Howard, just like the rest of that Ohio State team, they went off in the playoffs. They went off. And it's not pretty. Neither of them are pretty pass rushers. They're both, And I think Jack Sawyer even a little bit more than JTT.
I think Jack Sawyer's a psycho. Like, I think that's his
Yeah.
He's got
100%.
Yeah.
He's got a. I likened him to TJ Watt, where he has that like just pure luck factor to him. But I think it's that he kind of makes his own luck with the way that he plays. He has that switch that very few guys have. And when it comes to JTT, I just think he's a decent player all around. But there's nothing there where I'm like anything more than a rotational guy.
Yeah, to me,
and he could probably be a starter, but like not a high-level starter.
He reminds me, and this is fresh because he's a Cleveland Brown, but I liked him coming out as a like 90-ish range player, like top 75 to 100.
Alex Wright?
No, Isaiah McGuire. Just like a really solid football player in Missouri. Like really solid. He went through your chest. He had a little bit of bend, some nice explosiveness, but like overall, there wasn't like a dominant trait that makes you really love a guy like that. That's why they get picked in the 3rd, 4th round.
Yeah.
But JTT's a 5-star, former top recruit, like one of the top recruits in his class. I think some of that plays like feeds into it still.
Sure.
The draft class in general. But and that's to say, like, I see a pathway for JTT to be a really solid rotational player. But like, yeah, I'm kind of there with you on that as well. We got way off tracks from talking about Will Howard to that.
But we kept it on Ohio State and Notre Dame that entire time, which is better than we can normally do.
But that's all to say that Will Howard, I charted him. He missed 3 throws in this game. He missed none in the first half. His only incomplete half was in the first half was that mesh rail throw, which is the correct throw, and he put it on the money. Xavier Watts just made an insane play. That he missed a double move that he really wanted back, even though I thought the receiver probably should have leveraged his route towards the corner anyway, where Howard threw the football. But like, still, if a guy's that open, you got to hit him. You don't have to be super precise with a guy that open. And he missed a speed out. Like, he missed 3 throws.
Yeah.
He couldn't have played a better football game in this one, or the Texas one for the outside of that interception where he got caught over the middle. But it's a pretty good way to end the season for Will Howard. This 4-game stretch, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that Ohio State team just after Michigan, and shout out to Michigan for giving us what we all deserved from this Ohio State team, because I don't think they do this without that loss.
No.
I mean, they were a really solid team. Don't get me wrong. But I truly think that pissed them off.
Do you think this might have
focused them?
Yeah. I mean, I think that Ryan Day is probably also very online. Well, there's a lot. The Ohio State fan base is psychotic, and they probably overstepped boundaries quite a bit, like doxing him online and sending his family death threats and stuff like that. But like, I'm curious now, like, if a psycho switch got flipped in Ryan Day, and this is just what we're gonna see now. Like, he's figured, he knows, he understands now.
Well, dude, there was the Emeka Egbuka, and we might need to talk about him a little bit more too. But the Emeka Egbuka reverse that he ended up fumbling was one of my favorite designed offensive plays I think I've ever seen. Chips.
I have a talking point. I want to talk about that in a second too, but you go on. Yeah.
Chip's a psycho.
Oh yeah.
And I love the biggest thing that I love about that game or that team is the run game. The way that run game operates is a lot of fun. And getting the ball to Egbuka and getting the ball to Smith, like in the back, like getting the ball outside the tackle to your playmakers on the outside is something that so many teams underutilize. And you saw it with Debo early. You see it a little bit with CeeDee Lamb in Dallas from time to time. You've seen it with like Jamar Chase and even Jefferson.
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Amon-Ra St. Brown. Get these dudes the ball in space and let them be athletes outside of the tackle. Because a lot of the times when you motion a back out or you keep the back in, the back ends up blocking a linebacker, and then you have a wide receiver matched up with a DB one-on-one in the open field. People don't like to tackle anymore. Bring as many small guys into the box as you can. Get the big guys out of there.
Yeah, I agree. So this is actually what I want to talk about because the run game eye candy is ridiculous. What Chip Kelly can do, like, and then off like tendencies off of that and off of that and off of that. It's like the Loki series where it's like the infinite timelines are branching. It's just like one thing off of another, off of another. Do you think he gets an NFL job this offseason?
I mean, I think that he could.
I can't stop thinking about like
where it would be.
The Detroit Lions, all those weapons. What he does fits kind of well with the talent's already on that roster.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a relationship there.
Dan Campbell,
because a lot of this stuff is relationship
politicky. Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe. I mean, that would be a fantastic. I mean, I would be fascinated by that fit. But let's talk about Emeka Egbuka a little bit because that run, he's got some freaking juice, man. He's got some juice.
I think it's more like Caleb Johnson juice than like long speed, but like and this is
he can make people miss.
He can throttle. He's got a good throttle to tempo his pace and make open field moves without losing any acceleration.
Yeah.
Yes. It doesn't take him any effort to stick a foot in the ground.
You think he goes top 15?
Top 20, yes. And
I think he's the third. I think he's the third guy off the board. I think the third guy could go as high as Dallas at 12.
Yeah, this wide receivers class to figure out because they're three different kind of niche receivers, right? And like Ted McMillan is a team that's going to want a big X, right?
Yeah.
Luther Burden's going to be a team that wants a slot Z manufacturer touch guy. And I think Egbuka kind of fits that, but I think Egbuka is more of a pure Z who's going to do a lot of dirty work over the middle of the field. So like, there's a lot of different routes that these teams could take.
Would it surprise you if he's one of the first two off the board?
No, it wouldn't. I don't think I'd be shocked if he was the first one off the board. I don't think it's going to happen, but like, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
I think the NFL is infatuated with Ted.
I kind of do too, even though I'm not.
Everything is leaning that way. Where
do you think Ted goes? Like 8 to Carolina? 4 to New England?
Yeah, maybe before that.
7 to New York if they're going to trade Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams?
Yeah.
I mean, I mocked him in our mock at 16 to Arizona, which I think would be a phenomenal fit. Like a nasty, dirty fit opposite Marvin Harrison Jr. Like their combination, their route tree combination.
That's some long targets right there.
Yeah. Atlanta could do it. I mean, there's a lot of teams that could use it.
Atlanta has Ted McMillan at home already.
That's true. I mean, could you imagine Miami drafting him with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill running all over the field, and then Emeka Egbuka, the space that could clear for a guy like Egbuka, and then they could do so much stuff there. There's so many teams. I mean, Keenan Allen's not re-signing in Chicago. He could go 10th overall, and that wouldn't surprise me. San Francisco.
That would actually be disgusting because he kind of reminds me of
Amon-Ra
and Keenan Allen and like those type of guys who aren't the best athletes. They're just professional separators, professional route runners. Is there anything else that you want to talk about from this game? I mean, there's so much talent that's not even NFL draft eligible right now. But
Sonny Styles, dude, I hope he declares. I had somebody in my mentions tell me, like, I've heard he might.
When's the deadline? The 23rd?
They have 5 days after their bowl game. So
24th.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, he's 20. He's only 20, though. And he's playing football in his hometown. So, like, I really don't think there's any rush there. But, dude, I think it was the second drive of that game. He came on a blitz, and it was clearly a chip and release from the running back. And that's the way Leonard was looking, like, the whole way, like some sort of chip and release there. And the back chipped Sonny Styles coming on a blitz, and Sonny Styles roboted out and stuck in his hip pocket and just ate it up. Like, some very instinctual plays for a guy who's in his first year playing linebacker at 6'3", 235. Like, I'm infatuated with Sonny Styles. Like, infatuated with him. Would he be he'd be a top 50 pick if he came out? I think he'd be a top 50 pick if he came out.
And imagine I mean, yeah, but just imagine him and Caleb Downs again up the spine
I
of that defense
know.
next year.
I know.
Insane.
Top 50 pick money. I don't know if he'll be able to turn that down. Another thing to realize, though, is his brother's also on the Ohio State football team.
Ohio State can pay him, though.
That's true. His brother's also a cornerback at Ohio State, so perhaps that's some incentive as well.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, we've talked about Jack Sawyer, we've talked about JTT, we talked about Tyreek, we've hit on the corners. Notre Dame draft talent-wise we're pretty much talking about next year offensively.
Yeah.
And kind of defensively, too, outside of Xavier Watts. Because, Jack Kaiser's fine. Riley Mills has been hurt. So, I think we hit on everything, man.
I have a question for you. And I don't want this to come off as a shot. But Jim Nagy, Senior Bowl director, said once again, team with the most NFL draft talent won the national championship. And over the last 6 years, it really does seem to go that way. So he's definitely on to something there.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you think it matters?
Recruiting versus coaching?
Not just that, but I guess my question is, these teams that win it, I think the question for me is, because you're going through, especially now where you have 4 more games,
mm-hmm.
How much higher can your draft stock soar from a good playoff run? And also, the other question that I have here is, yes, you might be an NFL talent, but how much are you being propped up because you're playing around
mm-hmm.
all other NFL talent? So yes, maybe 6 years.
That matters. I mean, those head-to-heads matter.
6 years in a row this has happened. But what I would really like somebody to look up
mm-hmm.
is, of those teams that have all of these guys drafted, how many of them end up getting second contracts at the NFL level? Is there a bigger?
Do we have any example? Do we have an overall example of a player from a conference championship, semis, and finals in a 3-game stretch previously before this new format that really blew up in those 3 games and their draft stock soared because of those 3 games? Because I'm having a hard time placing that.
I don't know.
But what I will say, but what I will say though, for teams like Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State, Penn State and Texas, that's a 3 and 4 game sample size.
Yeah.
Right. So that's not a small sample size.
No.
For Ohio State and Notre Dame, that's a 4-game sample size. So
draft nicks might only watch 3 games of a guy,
mm-hmm.
and
so we're talking about an extra 20% of the season. That's not to me, yes, absolutely. I think a guy could raise a stock on a good playoff run, because we're talking about potentially, if you make it to the national championship, an extra 5th of a season. So we're talking about 20% of the body of work. So comparative to if we're just talking about last year or the previous decade where it's just semis and finals, I struggle with that. I think we tried to do that with the first year with Cardale Jones, where
mm-hmm.
he exploded in the Big Ten championship game, exploded in the semis, and exploded in the finals, to the point where this guy might declare after 3 starts and go first round. And then he came back and it's okay, this is a day 3 quarterback, and he flamed out really fast. So I think the body of work still matters. But what I will say is those, if I'm watching tape on a guy and I only have and I have a full season tape, quarterbacks I like to watch as many games as possible. Edge rushers, defensive tackles, and any other position group, I want the best one-on-ones. Yes. That's going to naturally come in the playoffs. So if I'm watching 3 games on a wide receiver and they're all 3 playoff games, then that's what I'm using to evaluate him.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. So I do think there's merit to it, but I also think there's just a lot of common sense in that as well.
Yeah. 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 And especially if you're a team that has all this NFL draft talent, you've recruited well, and you've got NFL draft talent all the way down. Ohio State has it all the way down. Alabama has always had it all the way down.
Texas loaded
Yes.
this year. Like
Texas was loaded this year. LSU, when they won in 2019, was
oh my gosh, that team was
arguably the best
ridiculous.
team I've ever seen. Like,
yeah.
so
2020 Bama is kind of the same way. That 2020 Bama team was, and Jalen Waddle was hurt most of that year too, which is crazy.
Exactly.
Just so So I think a lot of that, there's some merit to it, but like also, the best team wins the national.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I think that's all.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of the Daft on Draft podcast. We've got 2 more episodes this week. I am off to Frisco, Texas on Friday. So we're working out some stuff next week. I'm taking my blue snowball microphone with me, so I will be able to record. We'll see what the video quality from a laptop and a blue snowball is. The audio and video quality is there, but we're going to give it a go. At least, I think at least 2 episodes. If I can get on 2 episodes, that'd be good next week of like every other day recaps or something like that.
Yeah.
Or Shrine Bowl or something. But who knows what it's going to be because player availability is like 4 hours a day. And
I might have some backup. Backup.
Yeah. So Dalton might drive the boat next week. But I think for now, that's good to go.
Yeah.
2 episodes this week. So we might shoot out another mailbag between today and tomorrow. So today and Thursday. So, all right. Until next time, I am Cory. That is Dalton. And this is the Daft on Draft podcast.